Good evening, ladies and gentlemen. This is TVP World. You're watching World News Tonight. I'm your host, Benjamin Lee. Our main focus tonight is the severe weather. Poland has been experiencing continuous rainfall, which is expected to last for many more hours. Rivers are rising to dangerous levels, forcing evacuations in multiple areas. Unfortunately, the worst may still be ahead. But first, let's take a look at tonight's headlines. J.D. Vance reveals his plan to end the Ukraine war, with Trump promising to seal a peace. Germany's new border checks spark fears of a far-right boost. AMP Football Cup kicks off in Warsaw, with Polish teams making history. After a dry summer, Poland is now facing severe weather. Regions in the south and southwest are grappling with sudden floods, with the worst conditions reported in Lower Silesia.
Rivers across the region have swollen, and firefighters are working around the clock to prevent flooding as much as they can. A sudden onset of torrential rains and the inability of the soil to absorb water after extended periods of drought has Polish rescue services scrambling. The Polish Meteorological Institute has raised its warning levels for the whole of the southwestern parts of the country. Flash flooding has already surprised local fire departments.
Dear citizens of Jarnołtówek and Pokrzywna, we ask for your help in filling and placing sandbags in our villages. We can't do it ourselves. We have been fighting since yesterday and there is no support.
The situation will be developing dynamically in the coming hours. At the moment, we're cooperating with the Czech services. The situation is complicated because the four rivers that pose the largest threat begin in the Czech Republic.
Poland is no stranger to flooding, and especially the floods of 1997 are remembered to this day. But while the current weather is comparable to then, Poland and other countries in the region are now much better prepared, Professor Mateusz Grygoruk told TVP World.
I remember that flood well. I wouldn't say very well, but well. Everything was a surprise. Nowadays, we can log into the servers. We have very good early warning systems, so we know more or less what might happen along the course of rivers. So in case something happens, the closer we are to the situation, the better the forecast can be.
Whether Poland truly is prepared will become clear over the coming days. For some places, the predictions are that another 80 millimeters of rain will fall on Saturday alone.
The front that brought these sudden downpours to Poland and the Czech Republic is unpredictable. The forecasts of the past 48 hours may have changed, but they are generally not optimistic. It is certain that the coming night and part of Sunday will see rain that in many places will break records.
Our correspondent, Mark Steele, reports from the Polish-Czech border. Take a look.
We're in Broniszowice on the Polish-Czech border, where the epicenter of the recent floods is taking place. As you can see here, there's a small creek flowing through this very village, and now it looks like a big river. It's overflown. You can see water on the streets, but also houses and people who had to be evacuated by the fire department. I spoke to a few of them. Let's take a listen to what they had to say about this very difficult situation.
It has never been this bad. Even in 1997, it was not as tragic, even though we had much worse equipment back then. Now we await for the residents' decision. What should we do? Will we evacuate them? Or will they go to their families? This is truly a great tragedy. This isn't the only town in the Otmuchów county which was so affected. All the villages located along the Czech border faced similar problems.
The situation is becoming worse by the hour, with forecasts saying that this night will be the most difficult throughout this weekend. And let me just remind that weather forecasts said that up to 350 liters per square meter could fall here in this part of Central Europe, in Czechia and Lower Silesia, as well as Opolskie province, throughout this very difficult weekend. So the rain is expected not to end until Monday. Marek Steele, TVP World.
Republican vice presidential nominee J.D. Vance has outlined his vision for a peace agreement to end the war in Ukraine. Donald Trump has pledged to broker a peace deal between Kyiv and Moscow.
J.D. Vance has recently spoken about his views on foreign policy in an interview with Sean Ryan. The vice presidential candidate stated that, if elected, Donald Trump would gather representatives of Ukraine, Russia and other European countries and negotiate a peace agreement which would end the war in Ukraine. While he did not present a clear plan that Trump's potential administration would propose, he outlined what he thinks the result of these negotiations would be.
What it probably looks like is something like the current line of demarcation between Russia and Ukraine that becomes like a demilitarized zone. It's heavily fortified, so the Russians don't invade again. Ukraine remains its independent sovereignty. Russia gets the guarantee of neutrality from Ukraine. It doesn't join NATO, it doesn't join, some of these sort of allied institutions, and I think that's ultimately what this looks like.
This outline differs significantly from Ukraine's stated conditions for ending the conflict, which include the recovery of all Russian-occupied territories. Abandoning the prospect of a NATO membership would be unpopular in Ukraine and would violate the Ukrainian constitution. Trump has spoken over the phone with President Zelensky once during the war. Zelensky indicated that he understood Trump intended to support Ukraine.
I only had messages that he will support Ukraine and will do everything how to stop the war and to do everything Ukraine be independent, European and free. So that's all messages I've got from him, but directly. But anyway, I can't, prognose. So and I think you also. So we will see in November what will be.
Donald Trump has left a lot of his foreign policy ambiguous, while J.D. Vance has openly criticized the U.S. government for providing large-scale aid to Ukraine. The victory of a Trump-Vance ticket could mean a reduction of aid to Ukraine, according to some observers. It might also lead to U.S. pressure on Kyiv to reach a peace agreement with Russia, even an unfavorable one.
Germany's decision to introduce border checks in 2 days has triggered mixed reactions. Some fear that the move could inadvertently boost support for the far right.
Starting on Monday, queues like these are something travelers to Germany will have to get used to. Even though the extra border controls won't mean every single vehicle will be checked, it will mean slower traffic. The German government's decision to reinstate border checks comes after a string of violent incidents involving migrants, such as the deadly stabbing in Solingen in August, over which a Syrian man was arrested.
We want people whose asylum procedure is the responsibility of another EU country to be sent back there.
But Germany's neighbors are not thrilled. Austria has already protested the decision and said it will not take in any migrants turned back by German authorities. Polish Prime Minister Donald Tusk strongly criticized Germany this week. He claimed the move was motivated by internal politics following successes of the far right in German state elections. The far-right Alternative for Germany party has seen electoral successes in 2 eastern German states and is leading in polls for the upcoming state elections in Brandenburg. Whether a tougher line on immigration will help Chancellor Olaf Scholz's SDP is doubtful.
Which could lead again to a situation that the German government raises the expectation that somewhat it can prevent all persons from entering it into its territory. And when voters realize that this is not possible in practice, they might as well turn to those parties that propose even more radical solutions.
Right-wing politicians have indeed reacted positively to Germany's plans and have called upon their own governments to do the same.
I think it's great. They just do it and simply notify Europe. So I hope our cabinet is able to do the same. We will see. But as far as I'm concerned, the sooner the better.
Despite the tougher immigration policies, Germany remains dependent on migrants for its economy. On Friday, Chancellor Scholz signed an agreement with Kenyan President William Ruto, making it easier for skilled migrants to come to Germany. However, the deal also includes a clause that makes it easier to return undocumented Kenyans to their country.
Poland's political landscape is heating up ahead of next year's presidential election. The main opposition party, Law and Justice, organized a massive anti-government protest in Warsaw today. They also gathered signatures for a referendum on the EU migration pact.
Hundreds, if not thousands, of people gathered in front of the Ministry of Justice in the Polish capital on Saturday. The leader of the Law and Justice Party, Jarosław Kaczyński, spared no harsh words for the ruling coalition.
We need to say this openly. What is happening today is an invasion of Poland, an invasion from the inside. We need to look at their goal, which is the pacification of our country.
The demonstrators expressed dissatisfaction with the changes lately introduced by the center-liberal government and the criminal investigations into the former conservative administration. During the protest, several people gathered signatures for a referendum. The right-wing movement wants to hold a public vote on the EU Migration Pact, a set of rules on the relocation of migrants from southern European countries to other member states.
We are willing to help everyone who needs help, but we are willing to help them in their countries. And we want to help those people who really need help, women, children, victims of wars, but not young soldiers who just want to rape and want to conquer Europe.
While the Law and Justice Party accuses the current government of supporting the Migration Pact, Poland in fact voted against the regulations during the vote in the Council of the European Union in May, along with Hungary and Slovakia. Prime Minister Donald Tusk then argued Poland is already welcoming thousands of Ukrainian refugees, so it shouldn't be included in the scheme. The pact was voted through nonetheless, since only a qualified majority was needed.
The people gathered here are really fed up with the current administration. They are chanting rather aggressive slogans, saying that this is basically an invasion of Poland, an autocracy here by the current administration. So you can truly see that the political scene in Poland is really, really polarized. From Warsaw, TVP World, Kazimierz Łysiak.
EU officials are calling for a boycott of Hungary, citing Prime Minister Viktor Orban's close ties with Vladimir Putin. The stance is gaining support from several EU member states.
The meeting in Budapest was informal, with no official list of attendees having been published, as most of the ministers decided to boycott it. Regardless, Hungarian officials hailed the meeting as a success.
I would just like to add that despite the idea of the boycott, all member states represented themselves.
The Eurozone ministers' decision to opt out from the event was a direct response to Viktor Orban's recent peace mission to Moscow. None of the EU's commissioners were present at the event, and most of the governments were represented at the civil servants level. According to European lawmakers, a boycott is meant to send a message to the Hungarian leader.
Viktor Orban has been the villain, if you want, of the European Council for quite some time. And I think this is now the message of everyone else for what he has been doing.
A further point of contention between Budapest and Brussels is the recent decision by the Hungarian government to file a lawsuit against the European Commission over the imposition of a €200 million fine. This decision has been deemed by Viktor Orban's government as unlawful.
Migration is a disintegration factor in the European politics. The pact which was forced on us a year ago failed.
As it was expected, the Hungarian government doesn't want to pay this amount, and they disagree with the decision. They claim that they protect the European borders.
So far, the negotiations between the European Commission and Viktor Orban's government haven't been successful. Instead, Hungarian officials are threatening Brussels with sending illegal migrants in buses. Belgian officials have deemed the move a provocation.
Hungary's threat to send migrants to Brussels on its own initiative and without consultation shows a lack of respect for the European institutions and the common policy.
The Hungarian government remains confrontative with the Commission and has a large amount of open cases on disagreements where Hungary is blocking the common EU position. This is unchanged.
The recent row comes along with the dispute over Hungary's move to extend its national card scheme, which could provide Belarusian and Russian officials with work visas. The European Commission has warned that such a decision will pose a threat to the security of the Schengen area.
Since Russia's invasion of Ukraine, the EU has imposed sanctions on over 2,300 Russian individuals and entities. With the sanctions renewal deadline approaching, some names may be removed from the list. Meanwhile, several EU countries are lobbying for more delistings, escalating diplomatic tensions.
As EU sanctions blacklist nears its September 15th expiration, member states are engaged in intense negotiations over its renewal. Hungary, currently holding the rotating EU presidency, is demanding the removal of several names, including Gulbakor Ismailova, sister of Uzbek-Russian billionaire Alisher Usmanov. Diplomatic sources speaking off the record told us that Hungary and Slovakia are pushing for her delisting, despite previous setbacks and a recent court dismissal. Now, MEPs in Brussels are under no illusions.
One family, one group of people who benefit from being close to Russia, to Kremlin, being given exceptional rights. I am not surprised that proposal might be coming from Hungarian and Slovak authorities. I think some people in those capitals, in those countries' capitals, are trying to serve Putin's entourage.
All the sanctions discussions and procedures are taking among the member states in the Council in procedure which is internal and confidential. So we are not at liberty to comment the discussions, the positions of member states.
Last spring, the EU delisted figures like Yandex co-founder Arkady Volozh after similar disputes. The EU legal service has already suggested removing Nikita Mazepin and Prigozhin due to weak cases. The sanctions remain in place. As the next sanctions review approaches in March 2025, there are fears that more names might be removed, potentially weakening the EU's stance on Russia. Sasha Farbach reporting from Brussels for TVP World.
Warsaw is hosting the 13th edition of the AMP Football Cup, a significant event as all three Polish AMP football teams will compete for the first time. The men's and women's senior teams will join the youth national team, which will perform in front of a Polish audience for the first time. Now, our reporter Alex Sumlinski has more.
The 13th edition of the AMP Football Cup has kicked off here in Warsaw at Hutnik Stadium. Now Saturday saw the Polish team play for the first time in front of an audience which has gathered here on the bleachers. The Polish women's team, which is a very young team, it's only about 2.5 years old, also played here today against England. Now, when I asked one of the players from the men's national AMP football team, what is it that makes this sport so popular, because as you can hear, the atmosphere is through the roof, this is what he had to say.
Maybe we don't want to show people that we can do it, but we just do it. And people are impressed about it. Whenever you are disabled, you can do things that normal people can do. And that's the thing that you need to do. Like, you need to try, because whenever you try, you're winning. So basically the winning is the part that brings people to this community.
Now, events like the AMP Football Cup are a chance to bring players together in order to practice, to polish their skills before they head off for other tournaments. Like I mentioned, the Polish women's team is a very young team, so this is a great chance for them to come together, practice their skills before they head off for the upcoming Women's AMP Football World Cup in November. If someone missed the games that are taking place at Hutnik Stadium in Warsaw on Saturday, don't worry, because there are 3 more matches coming up on Sunday, August 15th. So be sure to check those out. Everyone is invited to come and see them in Warsaw. For TVP World from Warsaw, Alex Sumlinski.
And now we'll take a closer look at the ongoing debate over Kosovo's independence and Serbia's stance on this complex issue. On Wednesday, the president of Kosovo, Vjosa Osmani, appeared in our studio. She stated that Russia is attempting to open a second front in the Balkans, with Serbia acting as its satellite state. Joining us today on TVP World to provide insight into Serbia's position and the future of its diplomatic relations is Serbian ambassador to Poland, Nebojša Košutić. Hello, sir, and welcome to TVP World.
Good evening, and thank you for inviting me in this live program.
So can you first help clarify the position as the statement made by the Kosovo president saying that, well, Russia is attempting to open the second front in the Balkans with Serbia acting as a satellite state?
I may speak only about Serbia's stances. And I'm sure that first and foremost foreign policy goal of Serbia is to become member of European Union. That's why we are conducting in good faith negotiations with Pristina, Kosovo, under the auspices of the European Union since 2011, hoping that we'll be able to reach constructive compromise in order to overcome problems that are present there. But to say that we are trying to make trouble in the Balkans is absolute nonsense. And if I have possibility to say, problem of Kosovo and Metohija, that's a full name of our southern province, is totally different from some other problems that are mentioned and were mentioned, especially what happens to the east in Ukraine, this terrible war, and some other countries of former Soviet Union. So I will just say to your viewers that Kosovo and Metohija were part of Serbia since 1912. It was before First World War. Kosovo and Metohija were not republic in former Yugoslavia. They were part of Serbia. And Albanians living in Kosovo were only national minority, not constitutive nation like six republic of former Yugoslavia that are today independent states. So from our point of view, attempt to change borders of my country, this is first attempt to change borders in Europe since 1945. That's something what happens to us by force. So Albanians, they have their national state, it's Albania, country with which we are trying to have as good relations as possible, and I think at least in the last couple of years we are managing to do that, and I may call Albania friendly country to us, but problem of Kosovo and Metohija remains, and it's very complex.
Right, I understand that Kosovo holds deep historical significance for Serbia, but at the same time, how do you see this historical narrative interacting with the current realities of self-determination and international recognition? We've seen since 15 years since Kosovo declared independence, and well, there's increasing numbers of countries that has been recognizing it. How does Serbia plan to navigate this issue in the long term if the current diplomatic situation continues?
This number of recognitions actually decreasing, because in the last couple of years we had more than 15 withdrawals of recognition. So also I heard the argument that no democratic country, actually only non-democratic, autocratic states don't want to recognize Kosovo. Actually, the issue is the opposite. Truth is the opposite, because the world's biggest democracy, for example, India, never recognized Kosovo. 5 members of European Union, including Romania, including Spain or Slovakia, never recognized Kosovo. And in my view, what's the most important? Ukraine never recognized Kosovo. No government in Kiev since 1999 or 2008, when Kosovo illegally declared independence, Ukraine, no government in Kiev, no president in Kiev ever recognized it. Ukraine is a friendly nation to us, and we respect territorial integrity of Ukraine in the same way as Ukraine respects territorial integrity of Serbia. That's very important for me, for people to hear, because these comparisons between plight that Ukrainians are now undergoing and what we are, what happened in Kosovo, it has nothing to do with another. Ukraine is country recognized by the whole world in its borders, yeah? And with Kosovo, for Kosovo, we cannot say the same thing.
Right. I think the drawing comparison between Ukraine and Kosovo is lack of international recognition perspective, but one that I think the Kosovo president is trying to draw close to a country that is trying to wait for its independence. And when it comes to what you mentioned about the countries that are supporting Serbia, supporting Kosovo, we also see the United States and the large part of the European Union largely seen as the well, heavy hitters when it comes to these democratic countries still supporting of Kosovo independence. How can we reconcile these differences with very polarizing support for both sides of the aisle?
We have to negotiate in good faith and to enable all people living in Kosovo to live in peace and freely, which is not the case at the moment. And as we speak, situation in Kosovo and Metohija is deteriorating. A lot of attacks on Serbian people living there are occurring. Kosovo and Metohija are cradle of Serbian statehood in Middle Ages, like something like Gniezno. Gniezno is for Poles. And you know, when Serbian Patriarch of Serbian Orthodox Church that has its historical seat in Kosovo, in city of Peć, cannot enter Kosovo and Metohija at all. He's not allowed by Kosovo authorities. What are we talking about? Or there are some monasteries on very important cultural sites on UNESCO list of protected sites because they are endangered. From whom? Serbs are expelled from most part of Kosovo. We have 200,000 internally displaced persons in Serbia coming from Kosovo today. When they try to return, they are arrested arbitrarily, very often without any indictment, proof of anything, with the only goal to intimidate the rest of Serbs to leave Kosovo, and then the problem is solved. But you know how you can reconcile that Patriarch of Serbian Orthodox Church and people cannot enter Kosovo, or goods, because there should be free movement of goods between us. There are a lot of agreements, like a Central European Free Trade Agreement that authorities in Pristina are not respecting. Problem is that they are not ready to respect what they sign in this dialogue which we conduct in good faith under the auspices of European Union. We signed very important agreement back in 2013, but it has never been implemented because the other side in Pristina, especially current government since 2021, is doing nothing to implement their obligations. And we are in a problem of now to go further, to sign anything else. For us it's unacceptable, because what has been agreed upon, it's not being implemented, and Serbs are leaving Kosovo because their living conditions are unbearable. It has nothing to do with the recognition or with the stance on some European countries or United States. We ask all of them to help us stabilize situation, calm down the situation, help Serb state remain to live there. Because day by day, they are taking various institutions. We are now afraid that the last thing that remain, where Serbs go to school or their health centers, may be also attacked, and people will have no other choice but to leave. And you know, all negotiations are futile if people leave. There is no possibility to do anything then. So we hope that Poland and very other important European states, including United States, which is not European, but it's a very important factor there, will help us to stabilize the situation, to implement agreements, to stem the outflow of Serbs from Kosovo whose living conditions there are unbearable and are not dignified for 21st century we are living in. That's our stance.
Right. I understand that the situation in Kosovo for some of the Serb minorities might be very difficult. And I believe a lot of it also has to do with Kosovo trying to build a multi-ethnical and very diverse population, a country that do see a lot of conflict. How much of it do you think is has to do with that, and how much of it do you think is on the onus of the government running Kosovo right there?
Problem is with current government of Kosovo and Metohija, they are not able to organize local elections, to let people participate in then local affairs. So they imposed mayors in cities and villages in Kosovo where Serbs have 97% of people living there, with Albanian mayors. Situation is very tense. Why is that? I don't know. But probably this terrible war in Ukraine created idea with them that they might overcome all the problems and realize their goals, carry out their goals about independence by accusing us that we are destabilizing things because we are proxy of Russia, which is total nonsense.
Right. That last statement, I think, will bring us right around back to the beginning of our discussion. So thank you so much for rounding this all up and providing your perspective. Really appreciate it. Thanks for being with us on TVP World.
Thank you for having me.
And thank you for watching this edition of World News Tonight. But for more news, update, and commentary, please stay tuned to TVP World.